welcome to our Lunchtime Live program on WJEJ. It's a partnership between Washington County Public Schools and the radio station. We're here the third Thursday of the month. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. Superintendent of Schools Dr. Boyd Michael joins me on today's show. Boyd, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Good afternoon, Will.
It's always funny to say 'tis the season at the holidays, but it also means budget time for you and the school system. It's a busy time. Does the holiday present any problems in keeping the momentum going and putting the package together?
I don't think so. We kind of go into the fall. We've obviously got a good start off to the new budget cycle. Starts on July 1st, so we're partway through. The first quarter's closed out. We can start looking ahead to what are the needs for the following year. So we kind of start a process of analyzing where we are in the current budget, which is currently known as FY20 for the 1920 school year, and start putting together a list of needs and looking ahead to new legislation, new requirements, the needs of our students, and put together our draft budget. Probably the most challenging part is we don't know a lot about funding until mid-January. But we want to go ahead and start thinking about our needs even before we understand our funding completely.
What's the quality of the guesswork involved? How do you handle that?
Our financial team has had a lot of experience trying to follow this over the years, and probably for a long time we could almost put the number within a few tens of thousands of dollars. A little bit more difficult right now. Last year we were pleasantly surprised two ways. The governor had dedicated more money to the state allocation than he was required to by law. There's an escalator factor that he's required to follow, but he exceeded that in his initial budget. And then the blueprint for Maryland, the first steps of the Kerwin Commission, some legislation was passed that added some additional money late in the legislative session. So we received some additional funding from that we put to good use.
Talk a little bit about just as a sidebar, talk about the Kerwin Commission. What I think folks hear that, or just hear Kerwin. How is that? What is that? How does it affect us?
So there was a group of individuals, and Mr. Kerwin was placed in charge of this committee, and it kind of took on the name the Kerwin Commission. Right. Much like 20 plus years ago, the Thornton Commission was named after the leader of that group. But it's really what's designing the blueprint for Maryland education for the long term. They're looking at, initially started out looking at funding formulas and things like that. It's kind of branched out into a whole variety of testing expectations and how funding would affect various things. So their work is wrapping up right now, and really it's some guidelines of what's going to happen, but nothing will be for sure until we start seeing actual legislation. So the Kerwin Commission could be 100% set aside come January, or it could be 100% adopted, the recommendations in that document.
As it's continuing to play out, as we get more from that group, there's almost from the start, actually, there's been some debate, the pros and cons of that group's work. It's not a group that's simply putting figures on the table that all sectors of public education are going to look, oh, that's great, that's great, that's great. It may present some challenges, if I'm not mistaken.
Like anything that's this large or kind of takes a life of its own and kind of expands, it gets into a lot of different territories. And we've read through the draft bill from last year, from the draft information, the draft commission report, pretty carefully. And there's a lot of pieces in there that could play out to be pretty interesting. And I think as people fully support it or fully don't support it, I think it's probably due to a lack of knowledge of what's actually in the commission report. Again, the report is only a report and won't amount to anything until we get to legislation. So I think you're going to see a lot of people following carefully what's going to happen in the legislative process this year. What will be included, won't be included, what will be amended, substantially changed, eliminated from the process altogether. Some debate, where the governor stands on some of this. I think the governor's very supportive of education, but I don't think he's going to support substantial increase in taxes and things like that. So I think there's a balancing act there between the various bodies as they work through the process here with the Kerwin Commission.
As we put together our budget and look ahead to this next year and the years to follow, what have our priorities changed? When you tie priorities to the budget, have they changed at all over the recent years, let's say, and in this next year or two to come?
Well, for me, my number one priority is students first. So as we look at various budget processes, even when we get involved in things well beyond academics down to capital maintenance and those types of things, we try to think about our students first. What are the conditions that will result in the best outcome for them? So what are their academic needs that we need to address, social emotional needs we need to address, even into the physical and environmental needs that we need, like from the standpoint of the classroom, heating, cooling, comfort. Obviously, you want to keep them dry, warm when they need to be warm, cool when they need to be cool. So all of those things are factored into our budget priorities. Some of the budget priorities are driven by things beyond our control. So if we have substantial increase in enrollment, like we do this year for middle school and high school, we need to redirect resources to our middle school and high school. If we have increase in enrollment in our English language learners, like we have over the last 10 years, we've gone up substantially from about 400 English language learners to now over 600. So we have to direct resources to support our English language learners. Our PreK initiative's been very successful, and it's been a substantial investment, and it's going to prove to be very valuable to those students for the long term. I am absolutely convinced it's going to change the lives of children forever just by implementing school for them, formal education for them, just a year earlier as we reach those needs.
What kind of feedback are we getting from those parents, that group's parents?
I think parents, what I hear from parents is they're amazed at what their child can do in some cases, surprised how quickly they've learned. For a lot of people, a big part of our PreK is just social emotional needs. Can you play together with your neighbors? Can you share toys? Can you interact appropriately? That's all part of PreK, as well as some very basic, simple, recognizing letters, learning to count, cooperative activities, all those types of things are all part of that PreK experience. But we have a lot of PreK students that at the end of PreK can read on a kindergarten, first grade level. A lot of research says our brain develops substantially by the time you're 2 or 3 years old. So I think we way underestimate what a PreK 4-year-old student can do, and they love doing it. I mean, the joy of learning in those classrooms is just amazing. I get the opportunity to visit our schools every day and to walk in a PreK classroom. If you want to have your spirits lifted up, go into PreK. Crazy things they might say, things they might ask you. Frequently I ask if I'm the president, if I'm from the FBI, something because I'm a man in a suit.
I'm a little troubled that you've said yes to that a couple of times.
I may have exaggerated my importance. But it just brings joy to my heart to sit down next to a child and they say, look, I can spell my name. Look, I know this letter. You want to hear me count to 5 or count to 10? They're excited about learning, and we need to inspire that and keep that love of learning going.
Well, as opposed to the flesh and blood part of it and the energy you feel in the classrooms, how about the data from the groups that are going through PreK, these early starters? When can we look at data and start to base some substantive things on that?
So I probably 20 years ago would have been a person that would have been hard pressed to support PreK. As we moved into all day K, believing parents have an obligation to raise their children at home and provide them with early education at home or a daycare provider or nursery school or whatever. But we really saw a growing need over the last number of years as Washington County dropped to, bottom, next to last, next to Baltimore City or PG County in kindergarten readiness. So the urgency was definitely there for us to address that need. Regardless of the circumstances, children were coming to kindergarten, not ready for kindergarten. So we started this initiative kind of mid-year 2 years ago, kind of expanded it throughout the year, made a greater investment this past year, made another investment in this budget cycle right now, and we've already seen the fruits of our labor. We have leaped up in kindergarten readiness now with the percentage of students. Of those children that have attended our PreK, I think we rank 4th in the state if you've gone through our PreK compared to students that have gone through other PreKs in the state. I anticipate our biggest change will come maybe yet next year. It won't be this January, February when we report data, but in January, February of 21, We will have had over 1,000 children in pre-K. We will have had our teachers in place for a full year. We will have been through curriculum revisions. Teachers will have a year under their belt of teaching pre-K. And I think our biggest results are yet to come in pre-K.
Are we still describing it as an expansion of pre-K as we continue to move ahead? For instance, next year, it'll be an even more expanded program?
The opportunity will exist for more children to participate in pre-K. We added 20 teachers this year, and we did indeed add 20 new programs to pre-K. Some of those programs aren't completely full. As those programs get 10 or 12 children in, we add an instructional assistant in the room. So we have a number of rooms that only have 10 or 12 children. So we have room without adding more teachers to expand our pre-K. But we do have a lot of 4-year-olds that parents, want to keep them at home, or they're very satisfied with their daycare provider or family provider, and we certainly respect that. So we'll see where we kind of land. What is our maximum limit of how many slots we actually can fill? We believe we have about 1,500 4-year-olds out there that will attend public school by kindergarten, and we have about 1,100 of them in pre-K at this point. If all of them wanted to attend, we would make room for everyone to attend.
Today's guest is Dr. Boyd Michael on Lunchtime Live. We're here the third Thursday of the month. Boyd is superintendent of Washington County Public Schools. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. As we continue to look at the budget process a little bit more, what are the challenges? What are the most serious challenges as we look ahead to this next fiscal year and beyond?
Well, a lot of confusion about this year. So people that have been hearing about Kerwin, maybe people that are excited about Kerwin, support the significant investment that Kerwin might make if legislation is passed, are assuming that that's going to happen this year. From everything that I've read, from everything that I've seen, that is not going to happen. The governor's required again by law to increase his budget for education the equivalent of the CPI. So that's about 1.2%. So we anticipate that will happen at the state level. But beyond that, the investment in Kerwin for the FY21 year, the July of 2020, I think is going to be pretty small. About $57 million in additional Kerwin-like money or blueprint for Maryland money. That's not going to have a huge effect on our budget for this year. So if Kerwin is passed, if the blueprint money is passed as proposed or anything like it, that money really won't start to flow for another full year away. So I think some people are anticipating more money coming right now than will actually come. Big challenge for us. I understand our county commissioners being fiscally conservative. I appreciate that. I appreciate they've invested in roads where they've lost road money, supporting our firefighters, our police force, and things like that. But I would hope that they would recognize all the changes that are happening in this county affect the public school system. The children that we have coming to school are different than the children of 20 years ago, and they require more services and more support, particularly for their social and emotional needs than ever before. We're prepared to meet their academic needs, but their social and emotional needs are in the way right now. And we need additional support locally to support what we're doing in Washington County. So we're challenged by that. Unfortunately, I think our county, again, will be identified as a low-effort county. It's a designation from the state of counties that don't keep up with the educational investment that other counties do across the state.
That's a reflecting of our local spending on education?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a reflection of what's called maintenance of effort. If they don't go beyond the minimum over a period of time, it's a designation and a requirement from the state that they'll be forced to commit some additional dollars to support education. But we'd like to see them voluntarily provide that money and beyond to meet the needs of our students. The other big challenge we have locally is our capital budget. We've been working on this for a number of years. We're really in a position right now that we are looking at a replacement cycle of schools that's probably closer to 200-year replacement cycle. We've talked to the county commissioners about that. The state appears to be willing to fund their portion of the money, but it requires a local match. We're in a fortunate position that the state provides 71% of our money, and we only had to put up 29% of the money for eligible construction costs. and we're challenged to do that here locally.
You know, it's funny. We have a charming mix of new and old when you really canvass the whole county and the school buildings all across Washington County. And yet we have a fair number, if not an almost unmanageable number, of very old buildings that our teachers and students, staff, and the community are using. And that's a challenge on the year by year.
Right, so we were averaging more than a building a year being replaced as we went through Ruth Ann Monroe and Pangbourne and Morgansville, Rockland Woods, Antietam Academy, Bester, all those projects. And now we've had a little bit of a Jonathan Hager. Now we've had a little bit of a gap, and next year we will be opening Sharpsburg Elementary and the addition to the Barbara Ingram School. But after that, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years until we open another school, and it could be, well, we're projecting 2 years out, but based on funding, it could be another 3 or 4 years between opening the next school. That is not a sustainable cycle, and we want to work in partnerships with the county commissioners and just figure out a way that we can improve this 200-year replacement cycle. It's just not a sustainable plan. And I don't want to put us in a position, well, for the tenure that I'll be around, we're going to make sure the kids stay dry and make sure the kids stay cool and make sure the kids stay warm. But long term, someone has to be looking at the building needs. I understand roads and things like that wear out, and there's a need to replace bridges and potholes and everything else. But it's also true of your buildings, just like your home. If you don't do anything with it for 25, 30 years, you're going to have some major replacements coming all at once. That's true for our school buildings as well. And that fact needs to be recognized soon before we build a crisis too big to overcome.
Well, we have to, and we have, and I think that's a point that, you know, some folks' hackles have been raised a little bit, because even in an early hypothetical discussion of how do we replace some of these existing schools, we've talked, I mean, it's on the table. There's been at least mild discussion over whether some of the older buildings we may not be replacing them one for one. We may be replacing 2 or 3 with one as we look out, you know, in a longer term.
So across the last couple county commissioner groups, we've been presenting plans that would replace a school, at least one school a year. And basically without the words, with the lack of funding, we've been told no, that's not going to happen. So I challenge staff, we got to look at another plan. We just can't keep coming back, all sit in the same meeting, present the same plan as if this is going to happen, and it's not. So staff came back with the idea of combining 2 and 3 schools into one as a reduction of the number of schools, the replacement cycle, and a cost-saving measure. It's not a bad plan in that sense. It's not necessarily the best plan as we look at what's best for all of our students and supporting our community schools, which we've tried to as a long-time tradition here in Washington County. But I do want the community to know this is not a response that we're interested in doing from our sake. It's a response in being fiscally responsible to, if these are the funds that are available to replace schools, we got to come up with another strategy. And the strategy is combine 2 and 3 schools into one and try to do that more efficiently.
The level of discussion and debate in the months and the years ahead is going to be pretty rich on this subject.
I talked to staff, and they think we're well on our way to the first school. And I said, I think there'll be a good bit of debate yet to come.
Yeah. How do you feel about Sharpsburg? Sharpsburg's looking good?
Sharpsburg's looking good. I try to visit it about once a month. It's to go from what was a valley and a muddy site to now pretty much under roof. We don't have full stairways in or the elevators not in, anything like that, but you can see each of the rooms shaping up, the office area. It is going to be such an improvement over the age of that building, which is substantial. Back in the 30s, I think the original part of Sharpsburg. The management of car traffic and bus traffic. The community gym is going to be beautiful, a huge facility to add down to South County that will be available to the community to use. So I'm really excited about that building. We've done some redistricting, which will take some stress off of Boonesboro Elementary. The parents that will be moving into the Sharpsburg district seem to be very satisfied with the school there now and with the new facility that's going to be available for their students. So that's a very exciting project.
There's nothing like that feeling.
Yep.
Cutting the ribbon and grand opening and having that level of excitement in the community. Just a brand new building.
They're going to be very proud and very pleased with that structure.
If you're just joining us, Dr. Boyd Michael, Superintendent of Washington County Schools, is my guest on Lunchtime Live. Today's show is sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. All I'm going to do is throw this at you and let you go with it. Career and college readiness. Talk about that beyond the buzz phrase that it is.
It is a buzz phrase here in recent years. College and career readiness, kind of a short, we refer to it as CCR. A big initiative pretty much across the nation where by 10th grade we're trying to get children that are career and college ready so that they can start pursuing a variety of different opportunities. Some children may pursue career and technology education their junior and senior year, advanced placement programs, maybe their whole schedule would be advanced placement programs. Our International Baccalaureate program might be an option for children that are college and career ready. The community college, either in our Essence program or middle college program, might be an opportunity for some of the students if they're college and career ready. And for students that aren't college and career ready by 10th grade, we want to continue their last 2 years of school, trying to get them up to that opportunity. That when you leave high school, you would have options, military, not necessarily college per se, but college in the sense of certification programs or true, 2-year college, 4-year college. Or technical college, technical programs, those types of things. So when I say college and career ready, I think of all the different post-secondary education opportunities you have or walking right straight into the workplace. And I'm very excited about a variety of programs we have at the technical high school and really across our county where students are walking out of high school, 18 years old, and we have a number of students at this point that we're hearing back from, hey, I got a job, $45,000, $50,000, $55,000 starting pay based on their technical skills that they have without further education. And I think many of those students will probably continue their education in some fashion, but they're already working a job that pays maybe more than the family income of Washington County right now. So we're expanding on those types of programs, really excited about the expansion of Barbara Ingram. We have 2 programs that we're going to move to the downtown facility, our game design program, which is a lot of animation, a lot of sound, a lot of artwork, which is going to fit right in with Barbara Ingram. Our multimedia design program, very similar again, a lot of computer, sound type work is going to fit well into the Barbara Ingram program. And then we're going to bring on advanced manufacturing. So this will be high-tech manufacturing, robotics, those types of things, as well as iCloud computing, artificial intelligence. So those are 2 new programs that are coming to the technical high school this fall. They are going to be off the chart. They're going to be some of the first or the first in Maryland and maybe on the East Coast. So we are really excited about all of our programs that we have really ramped up, provided certifications. When you graduate, you're going to walk out the door with a certification in various areas in some programs. And these couple new programs are just going to take us to a whole new level.
I think what's fascinating to me is that the obvious opportunities are there, very specific opportunities at Tech High and at Barbara Ingram with a much shorter history at Barbara Ingram, but there are opportunities for kids all across the county in various programs.
Absolutely. Our IB program at North High, can't be beat if that's an interest of students. But we have academic and career and technology education programs at every high school that we've invested in and that we support, and we would encourage children to consider as they look at their options available to them as they prepare for their future. Future is going to be very different for children. If you worked hard, if you had a little bit of academic skill, there was a job for you in Washington County when I graduated, which now has been about 45 years ago from high school. Not always true right now, that you can just walk out of high school. If you have limited skills, and particularly if you don't have a hard work ethic, you might be challenged for the future. Even with a 4-year degree, you might be challenged for the future. You're going to have to be able to produce something, think through with all that problem solving, creativity. All those things are very real for the job marketplace ahead. So we want to do our part in preparing children while they're in public school and encourage children to really be thinking long-term, as well as parents thinking long-term, what's going to be best for your child.
You know, it's funny, at your personal and professional level, how tough is it to sell? I mean, you're well connected in the community for a very, very long time, from the school system out into the community. Is it tough to sell how education has changed in the county for maybe some of even colleagues, but certainly other members of the community, in how education has progressed to where we are now? How much more high tech there is, how many more opportunities there are. Is it tougher to discuss this at the current day level with maybe some of the more traditionalists in the community?
I think it probably is. You know, most of us, all of us, have attended school at some point in our lives, so everybody's an expert on public education.
Right.
You know, so you know the experience that you've had. So if you had an experience just a few years ago, you might be somewhat current on public education. But for most parents, that high school experience, middle school, elementary experience is 20, 25 years ago. For some that are grandparents, great-grandparents, it's like me. It's 45, 50 years ago. It is very, very different. And the needs and demands of what our children are going to need for their future is very different. And I want us to be in a position, again, where we're placing students first, that we are changing the lives of children forever and for the good. So that's really important to me as superintendent. I believe to our board it's very important, and their support for the programs that we've initiated and the needs we're trying to address of all of our children. You can see the passion they have, as well as our teaching staff, our administrative staff, our educational support staff. I just can't praise them enough. I think the world of them. I think they're working extremely hard to help our children be successful, despite the challenges that some children bring to the school system.
Do you have to be sold internally by folks who may have an initiative, they may have a direction that maybe you either haven't seen, haven't explored, haven't been convinced on? Can you be convinced by staff, by the next level administratively below you or even further below that, from the staff at any level, that, Boyd, can you listen to me on this point? I want to try to sell you on this. How much of that goes on?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be the first to admit I don't know everything. I know very little to some degree. So I rely heavily on the expertise of, again, administrators, teachers, and educational support personnel. Those folks are on the ground, working in the trenches, working side by side with our students and our colleagues, and I count a lot on them and the feedback they have of what would be best. Sometimes it can be a little bit self-serving, and I have to temper that a little bit in a sense of, remember, we're here for students first. And we have to think long-term, which is challenging because none of us really know what is that job market 5 years, 10 years, 25 years from now. Think about a child entering pre-K right now. They're entering the workforce is at least 13, 14 years away, let alone if they go to college, and let alone if they work for 50 years. That's 50, 60 years away, their working career. What does that job market look like? So it's a little bit of a daunting task and responsibility to educate children that are prepared for that type of workforce that's yet to be developed.
Final note, what's your message to the community? How can the community, parents, grandparents, listeners to the radio station who don't have a direct connection, how can they support the school system?
Have an open mind of the needs of our children, that things have changed in our community. Be supportive to at least a reasonable level to consider how funding could help support many of the things we're doing. Don't hesitate to contact your local principal, local school board member. Don't hesitate to contact me if you see things that you believe are a waste of money or waste of time or aren't important. We'd be glad to have a conversation with it. It's certainly possible that you could be correct, or it's certainly be possible that it's something that if we share our thoughts and ideas in the direction we're going in, that you could get behind and support.
Boyd, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to do the show. Best of the holidays to you.
Thank you, Will, and happy holidays to everyone.
Our show today has been sponsored by Volvo Group Trucks, a premier employer in Washington County. Follow them on Facebook at Volvo Group Hagerstown or visit the website volvogroup.com/Hagerstown. Today's guest, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Boyd Michael. We're here the third Thursday of the month, the partnership between Washington County Public Schools and WJEJ.